Hello and welcome to the Longbox Review Comic Book Podcast. I am your host, Eric. Welcome to the show. Today's episode is going to be about the comics that I read in July of 2022. So my pull list review for the July comics I read, which numbered at 47. And that includes the following. I read X-Men Annual Number 3 because of the never-ending reading pile on the Pulp to Pixel podcast feed. They spotlighted that particular issue, and based on what they said about it, I decided to read it. I quite enjoyed it. I also read Avengers 148 through 150 on the Marvel Unlimited app, as well as Amazing Spider-Man 51 through 53, as I continue slowly my examination of the history of Gwen Stacy and how her relationship with Peter Parker developed over the years, because I had not read all that stuff. So I was back to that in July. I also read Faithless II, which is a collection of the 6-issue miniseries, and I will talk about that later. I also read Nightwing 93, Batman Superman World's Finest number 4, Marvels number 11, or I should say The Marvels, the graphic novel Radical, Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow 6 and 7, Sunstone by Stjepan Šejić, Volume 1, which, while I'm not going to talk about it in depth here, that's something I quite enjoyed. Šejić has a unique style, but more importantly, that I enjoy, but more importantly, what I really like about that volume was the examination of not just sex, but attitudes towards sex, and just a developing relationship, that is a burgeoning love story. So I quite enjoyed that, and I have some other of the Sunstone volumes that I will get into at some point, because during the height of the pandemic, Šejić released those for free for anybody. So thank you, Mr. Šejić. I also read the Superman vs. Wonder Woman Treasury, which I will be talking about. Justice League Incarnate number 3, Invisible Kingdom Volume 1, which contains issues 1 through 5, which I got more or less recently because I wanted to read more of Christian Ward's work. And at the time of this recording, I have ordered, I think, Volume 2, maybe Volume 3 even as well. Anyway, Love Everlasting number 4, digitally through the Everlasting Productions Substack. Batman Catwoman number 12. So, that ended. Just like with other Tom King written works, I think I need to reread this whole thing at once to ensure that I'm getting everything that I think I got reading the individual issues. Especially there were some delays, I believe, or maybe I'm thinking of Human Target. But anyway, I didn't care for the ending. It seemed like the previous issue was the better ending, but I'm also not recalling the particulars of these issues. So, like I said, I need to go back and reread this. I mean, lovely art. I really like Clayman's work on that. I know there's a couple issues there where somebody else was doing the art that I've forgotten. Sorry about that, but I really like Clayman, and I like the Man and King together. But I don't know. I'm not sure if this particular series worked for me, even though I was a huge, huge fan of the King written Batman volume. So anyway, I'll come back to that at some point, I'm sure. All right. I read Crossover Volume 2, which contained issues 7 through 13. Dark Crisis number 2. Dark Crisis Worlds Without the Justice League, Superman. Man, sometimes these titles that these, DC and Marvel throw on here, mostly DC, I have to say, they're probably the worst at it. It's ridiculous. Anyway, Saga number 60. Spectators number 2, which I said last episode, I think, that I would probably be talking about it on this episode, and I'm not. Because I think looking back at it, I think I pretty much covered enough of, I overlapped a little too much on that last episode, talking about issue number 1. So I don't think I need to talk about issue number 2. Umbrella Academy Apocalypse Suite, which was the first volume of that series, which contained issues 1 through 6. And finally, I read Legion of Superheroes Volume 3, number 37 for the Legion Project podcast. And that episode is currently, has been released. So as you listen to this, you can also go back into the Longbox Review or the Daily Rios podcast feeds and download and listen to Peter and I talking about the first part, the first 2 parts of the 4-part Superboy story. All right, first up is, skipping all the way down to Faithless II, issues 1 through 6 by Maria Lovett and Brian Azzarello, with letters by And World Design. So in case you're not familiar with Faithless, I'll just read the back of the book here for you. Power has a price, and Faith has only begun to pay. Faith embarks on a journey deep into the exclusive art world with hellish consequences after she accompanies her lovers, the free-spirited Poppy and the elusive Louis. Or is it Louis? I never know. Straight into the epicenter of dark magic. Turin, Italy. As she dabbles with new paint and new partners, her own power begins to shed light on who and what she truly is, and the devil will be by her side to guide her hand. The creators present the next chapter in their acclaimed erotic thriller as Faith descends into the world of dark magic and even darker corners of the human soul. So I continue to be fascinated by Maria Lovett's work in this series, which quite honestly is what keeps me coming back. Not so much the story itself. I mean, this kind of a plot where an ingenue is seduced by dark forces or a bad personality, so to speak. But it's Lovett's. It's her style that. Well, I'll talk about that a little bit more here in a second. But anyway. So, based on the work here in the 2 Faithless collections that I have read, and there's a third that I'm waiting to be released as well. I have bought several other of her books, such as Porcelain, Luna, Heartbeat, and Eros Psyche. But I've yet to read them. But based on her work here in Faithless, I have faith that I will enjoy these other stories. I hope, anyway. But back to Lovett's art. There's a sketchiness to her work here that I feel comes across as primal in a way, which is a theme that's heavily explored in this series generally, and we get more of that in this second volume. So the cover features Faith's face with a curious expression of, I guess, maybe submission with Poppy behind her, her open mouth next to Faith's ear as if she's whispering into it, tempting her perhaps, and a red hand covering her Faith's right eye, and another tattooed hand cradling her throat. I can't quite tell. It looks like she's about to be strangled, but it's also the way it's drawn. It could be just more of a resting state for the hand. I don't know. I like that the duality of this cover image. But just overall, the cover image, it denotes a sort of menace, not just from the 3 supporting characters, but maybe even Faith's willing participation with or to them. She seems powerless to their influence, but, she's so central to the story, and she does show some agency in this story, which was a welcome addition based on what I remember of the first one. All 3 of these characters, I'm just going to call him Louis because I don't know. Louis, Poppy, and Solomon exert their influence through a lot of sex in these issues. Yes, there is that draw because we get to see more or less some explicit sexual scenes in this, but that's really secondary to the dark journey that Faith she continues on. There's even a major reveal about one of these characters that surprised me and elevates the series beyond what I read in the first volume. At least in terms of actually, there's kind of 2 reveals. Well, a reveal and then the cliffhanger. So, like I said, it elevates it in terms of Faith's journey that's been continuing through these 2 volumes, and then I assume through the 3rd one. Boy, I really hope they stick the landing on that. But what I really liked about this collection were, especially what I liked about it, was the dream sequences, or in some cases, perhaps even just like visions that Faith has, that really turned up the horror movie aspect of the story. For example, there's a scene here where dogs are starting to converge on her, and they're barking at her and lunging at her, and they're coming from all over in this little or the space in Italy that they happen to be on a bridge, I think. Oh, and then when they start to attack, Faith does something, and all the dogs are suddenly dead, but no one else is around, which is that to me that says that she's in some sort of dream state or something. And then she faints. So, and there's a few things like this that happens. Faith, however, seems quite oblivious for the most part to what is happening to her. Kind of like she's in a dream. She's just going through the motions, or she's, just experiencing what the dream state is giving her, or delivering to her. So it's like when you have these kind of dreams where it's in a dream, that you're in a dream, or that there's something not quite right. But you just accept it and move on. And that's kind of how I took Faith in a lot of these scenes. I do find that a little frustrating, but it could be that, from a plot standpoint, maybe she's under some sort of influence. It is suggested that she is. Like I said, on that cover, I think there's a strong suggestion that she is. In the story itself, I don't know that it's that overt. However, she is starting to show some ownership of her power, such as when she makes a snobby Italian Olivia hallucinate. I think blood coming from her nose after Olivia essentially. Well, I guess in a sense, Olivia thumbed her nose figuratively at Faith, and so now that actually works better for me. But anyway, she has some agency. And it also demonstrates that Faith has some sort of connection to, I'll just say, magic, for lack of a better word. Whether that's a positive for her remains to be seen. Obviously, this being a horror-tinged book, more than likely, this will not end well for Faith. In a later issue in the collection, Faith meets and has sex with a ghost, both demonstrating her growing abilities and how nonplussed she is about such things. So it's like, I sometimes have a hard time understanding this character, which I think is a bit of a drawback to the series as a whole. I kind of blame that more on Azzarello than I do Lovett, because boy, if I was just reading this in a prose style, I don't know that I would be as engaged with it. I guess you could say that about a lot of comic book stories if they were told in that way. Anyway, in the end, Faith does start to take matters into her own hands and begins a journey that I assume will take us into the 3rd volume. So, and like I said, I'll be getting that. So if you're into, I don't know, a young woman who is being seduced by a demon and other entities, or, just exploring her journey, maybe this is a book that you might enjoy. Next up is Radical: My Year with a Socialist Senator by Sophia Warren. When I came across this book in previews, I was intrigued both by the insider aspect and what it meant to be a democratic socialist, thanks in large part to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Is that how I should say it? Ocasio-Cortez. Anyway, I think this memoir-like book succeeded more on the former than the latter, but that's, maybe that's more of my expectation than the actual content, which, by the way, is the following. So, in early 2018, cartoonist Sophia Warren was not paying attention to New York state politics, but that summer her Brooklyn neighborhood began buzzing about Julia Salazar, a 27-year-old Democratic socialist running for state senate whose grassroots campaign was inspiring an army of volunteers. When they beat the odds and won, Warren found herself wondering what would happen next. How does it work when an outsider who runs on revolutionary change has to actually do the job? So she decided to find out. This book is a remarkable graphic memoir of Warren's experience embedded with Julia Salazar and her staff during their first year in office. From candid conversations and eyewitness experiences, Warren builds a gripping and intimate portrait of a scrappy team of community organizers battling entrenched power structures, particularly to advance Julia's marquee issue, housing rights. So when I got this, I started reading it, and I could not put this 320-page book down. I normally read these books right before I go to bed, but I was reading it every night, and until I finished it, because it was pretty gripping. I was intrigued about what we would discover about the candidate, Julia Salazar, when she becomes state senator, as well as what Sophia herself would discover about herself, her politics, and her subject matter, Julia, and Julia's staff. And I guess New York politics, for that matter. There's a bunch of dimensions to this. Along the way, we get introduced to Salazar's team and the challenges they all face. Warren is able to take large-scale issues like housing and healthcare and break them down into, graphically, I should say, break them down into informative and compelling ideas through the visuals. And she even cites her sources in the panels, which I quite appreciated. I guess about the art, it was, think of it as kind of like political cartoons drawn in a sequential style. And that's really dumbing it down. If I have any criticism about the book, it's that I don't feel like I got to know Salazar more, which is kind of the reason I wanted to read this book. But yeah, I think that's just kind of the reality of the situation. Maybe what I expected is what Warren expected. Like she would have more FaceTime to get to know Julia. And that's not what happens because Julia's off doing state senator stuff. Meanwhile, Sophia is, like I said, embedded with the staff. And so she spends a lot more time with the staff. And the staff is, as we discover in the book, does a lot of the work, a lot of the legwork, the groundwork, laying the groundwork for things. Though, if you're familiar with the television series The West Wing, it's the initial concept of that show and the early episodes was about this. It was more about the staff. It was supposed to be more about the staff than the president, and so I think that's what Radical was actually became or developed into for Ms. Warren. At the end of the book, Warren hints at a sequel as she shows herself looking out a window. She says in the panel, "I'm excited to watch what happens. The final page shows the same scene, but without her there," and quote, "or maybe I'm done with just watching." If only we were all more like Salazar and Warren, I think, in regards to our interaction with or attitudes towards politics. Maybe we wouldn't be in the state we are in the United States of America, as we are these days, which is, pardon the soapbox, but scaring the shit out of me. So anyway, I quite enjoyed this book. It was something very different, but I'm glad that I picked it up and recommending it to you as well. So let me know if you pick this up and read it. Let me know what you think. I'd especially be interested to know or to hear from people that live in New York and what you think of State Senator Salazar. Okay, so I think I think this next one is the most notes I wrote for any of these books. This is all new collector's edition C-54: Superman versus Wonder Woman. So this is the Treasury comic that I mentioned earlier. This is by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, Jerry Conway, Dan Adkins, Gasper Saladino, and Jerry Serpi, and Joe Orlando, with a cover by Garcia Lopez, Adkins, and Tatiana Wood. So if you're not familiar with this is the Superman versus Wonder Woman Treasury, with the two apparently attacking each other on the cover, with Uncle Sam, that "I want you" picture that we're all familiar with in the background. So it says on the cover, "The battle you thought you'd never see." This is a 72-page untold epic of World War II, where the amazing Amazon and the Man of Steel are in conflict over the impending use of atomic weapons by America, while Baron Blitzkrieg and his Japanese ally Sumo attempt to steal the technology. Of course, the two superheroes join forces in the end, as they always do. But as Wonder Woman reflects at the end of the story, once Pandora's box is opened, is doom close at hand. So this is an interesting book. I love Treasury Comics generally. I have over 24 of these, most of them from the late 1970s, early 1980s. And I've had this comic in my collection for several years. I bought it at a Comic-Con at least 6 years ago at the time of this recording. Maybe longer. But this is the first time that I've actually read it. The only thing I knew about this really before I read it was that it was set on Earth 2. This is pre-crisis, folks. Despite the characters and supporting cast all looking like the ones from Earth 1. For example, there's the Daily Planet in this, and editor-in-chief Perry White, which those at that time they were not part of Earth 2. But both Superman and Wonder Woman, they look just like their Earth 1 versions, but it is Earth 2 because it's set in World War II and all this stuff. So anyway, I mentioned the cover earlier. It pretty much depicts the content of the story with them, like I said, with them attacking each other. There's the back cover. There's a separate back cover with more fighting between them. The two heroes actually do fight each other for 9 of the 72 pages, a little more than 9, but rounding down. And they even have the wherewithal to stop their fighting on Earth and go to the moon to complete their, I don't know, their battle of wills, their philosophical difference. It just bizarre. It would seem like that whole thing was too, well, it was really heavy-handed because when they get to the moon to do their fight, Wonder Woman spies this dead city on there, some alien civilization who colonized the moon, I guess. And there's a glow to the city, and she surmises that before Superman clobbers her, the jerk, that the glow comes from atomic weapons being used on the moon, in this alien city. It's just ridiculous. It's a ridiculous story by Conway. Anyway, so yeah, they like I said, they have this difference about the atomic weapons. Once Wonder Woman learns about the Manhattan Project, she's intent on destroying America's atomic weaponry, hence the battle between them, because Superman seems to take the good of the many approach in his opposition to Diana's stance. Like I said, of course, they join forces to go up against Baron Blitzkrieg and Sumo, again for 8 pages. There's a fight between Superman and Blitzkrieg and Sumo and Wonder Woman, and I think maybe all 4 of them at one point. Anyway, so 17 pages of this 72-page book is just fight scenes, which, wonderfully illustrated by Garcia Lopez and Mr. Adkins. But I'll talk about that in a little bit. In the end, FDR tells Wonder Woman that, quote, America will never use the bomb to kill, unquote, and Superman condescendingly asks Wonder Woman as they leave the White House if she's satisfied with that assurance. Apparently, there's evidence to suggest that FDR didn't, and this is historical to us, that FDR didn't plan to use the atomic bomb. So I guess you could say the reversal of that particular, I'll say policy, for lack of a better word, is squarely put on Truman's shoulders. But still, because when I first read it, I was like, FDR's lying to her. Anyways, despite this issue's inadequacies story-wise, which really aren't that many, I just, really just minor nitpicks for a book that was released in 1970-something. Anyway, it makes more than makes up for the story with a wonderful Garcia Lopez drafting and the extra space the format allows, being a treasury book. There were so many double-page spreads and near splash pages to give him and Adkins the room to show, I guess, the grandeur of the characters and the scenery. That was the thing that was like, that's just really cool that Garcia Lopez put the wonderful backgrounds. You get a sense of where they're at in the various locations that the characters are in. For example, in the opening of chapter 3, I think this is the one where we see Baron Blitzkrieg in sumo. Anyway, he's Blitzkrieg standing there and we see this wonderful seaside vista. This tranquil, idyllic view, and here's this yellow-clad Nazi, superpowered Nazi. It's just wonderfully drawn, wonderfully depicted by Garcia Lopez. Should we have developed nuclear weapons seems to be the central question of the story, wrapped in a superhero slugfest, but this issue tries to have its cake and eat it too, which I found frustrating. Anyway, I mentioned Superman being condescending earlier. The way he's depicted in here also frustrated me a little bit, because he's a little too reactionary and jumps to anger a little too quickly for my taste. For example, after Wonder Woman knocks him around, he declares himself that, quote, even if she is a woman, no one treats me that way, and then he slugs her. And I really did not like the way that Superman was depicted here in this story. Wonder Woman is obviously the hero of the story to me, but I wonder, had I read this, if I'd gotten this book, much earlier in my comic book reading, late 70s, early 80s, would I have had the same reaction to it, or would it have been, I don't know. I have no idea. I've never been particularly, even when I was younger, I've never been particularly pro-government, or definitely not pro-nuclear weapons. So I don't know. But I think perhaps I would have sided a little bit more with Superman, only in the sense that I tended to like male superheroes more then. I don't know. But not now, not in this story for sure. But it was despite the issues I had with the story, I quite enjoyed the artistic aspects of it. All right, moving on to Saga number 60 by Fiona Staples, Brian K. Vaughan, and Fauna Graphics. I don't have that many notes on this. This is the last issue before they took a break, so we're currently in that break situation. And just like with any end of an arc, and I should preface this by saying Saga is well known for sucker punching us, especially at the end of arcs. And this issue did it to me in spades. So, if you've not read Saga number 60 yet, if you are a trade reader, spoilers ahead. So the gang in the story, this is late in the story too, the gang comes home to their tree spaceship to discover that it's on fire. Hazel sees this, and we see her remembering times she had with her dad aboard the tree ship. Remember, for those who don't care about such things or whatnot, Dad is dead at this point. With each memory, Staples shows a close-up of Hazel's face, and it gets more and more distraught as she keeps repeating "Daddy" until she bursts into tears to a confused mom, who tells Hazel she's sorry that Dad's gone and hugs her. When I was taking my notes for this, I did it the first time I read it. But as I was taking my note, rereading that scene and taking my notes, I did it again. I started to tear up, seeing this young girl who has not, on page anyway, until now, processed her father's death. And so it took the destruction of her home for so many years, and the memories associated, the memories of her father associated with that home as she's growing up, because we get to see those in those few panels, those memories, that she gives in to the grief and just starts crying. Very emotionally beautiful work by Fiona Staples. I hate her for how good she is at giving us those kind of emotional gut punches. So, just amazing work. Okay, finally, Umbrella Academy, The Apocalypse Suite by Gabrielle Ba, Gerard Way, Dave Stewart, and Nate Picos. Okay, so I have watched Umbrella Academy, the TV series, all 3 seasons, and my family and we love it. We think it's great. But as we were watching this last season, season 3, I found myself increasingly curious as to the differences between the events shown in the TV series and the original comic book, this first miniseries, the Apocalypse Suite, because I knew I bought it some years ago in a used bookstore, a local used bookstore. But I couldn't remember much about what I'd read, so I was like, oh, I should reread that. So I pulled it out, and as I started reading, I discovered I'd never read this. For some reason, I thought I had, but I had not. Or it could be my advancing age, and I have completely forgotten that I did read it. Either way, this was like a new story, reading a new comic book to me. Anyway, I mainly found the differences in characters the most interesting, because they're very different plots between this and the first series, the first season of the TV show. Anyway, the characters are most interesting, especially Luther, who is much more confident and stoic than his TV counterpart. And then there's Klaus, or Seance, he's mostly referred to in this book, whom I prefer the TV version because the actor who portrays Klaus is just wonderful. He steals the show every time. As I did Vanya, I preferred Vanya in the TV series as well, because she's more or less straight up a villain. Her daddy issues and issues with her family. She's not a great person. Let's just put it that way. Whereas in the TV show, Vanya tries to be. Anyway, I quite enjoyed this first volume, coming to it after watching the series, the TV series. The comic book was still entertaining on its own, regardless of the differences, and I'm looking forward to reading the other volumes, because I want to read the other, is it 2 or 3 more? I think it's 3 more. Anyway, regardless, I want to read them, and more importantly, Madison, like I said, we were all a big fan of the TV show, and I told her I had the book, and so now that I've read the book, finally, I'm gonna give it to her so she can read it, and then she was interested in getting the other volumes as well, so I'll have to do that. All right, that is all I have for you for this pull list review for the comic books that I read in July 2022. Please send me feedback via email at longboxreview@gmail.com, on Twitter at longboxreview, or you can send me texts or send me voicemails, as Sergeant America has been doing recently, which I need to get to those. Sarge, I have a plan for that. If you'd like to be like Sergeant America and send me some voicemails, please do, because right now I plan on throwing this all into one episode itself. So maybe I'll do a feedback episode. Anyway, you know what to do. Send me this feedback. You can also leave feedback where this is posted at the website longboxreview.com. And with that, thank you for listening, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.